So September 18, we will first review what we did last meeting. We had a submission of the second homework, which I think I have not yet returned to you. I'm sorry. But within this weekend, I will. Lecture on plaster and board materials. Then I did not give a homework, but then I gave a quiz last meeting on cement and concrete and plaster and board materials. And for the first time, we had it in Canvas. And we will discuss the result of the quiz. I'm not going into specifics on who gets what grade, but at least we know from this data, this graph, that there was someone got 100% and the lowest is something like 62%. And it took you only around at the most 20 minutes to finish the quiz, and I allotted 1 hour. So therefore, a 45 item quiz can be finished within 20 and maybe 30 minutes. So that gives me an idea that a 100 item quiz may be good enough for 1 hour the next time. So there are some questions which are, well, problematic. Here, the first one is, which of the following can be used in the concrete mix? So I made a mistake here because there can be two possible answers because of the mistake I made. That's why the answers, if you notice, is like divided among all of you. Almost 50% answered potable water, and then almost the other half answered water free with injurious amount of oil. So that I was supposed to change the text to water with some amount of oil, but I forgot. I must have been distracted that time. So, but the answer would have been potable water only. So what will happen here is that, so unlike Google Classroom, I can still change my settings so that I can make these two as the possible answers, and so anyone who chose any of these can have the point. But Canvas did not allow it, and also that what is so I could not do that. Therefore, what I'll do now is that if you notice here, it says 17 respondents for the water-free with injurious amount of oil. So I can identify who answered, and then I can give additional points. Okay, so it will be in my class record where I'll make the adjustment, not in the Canvas. The second question here, concrete is strong and resisting compression only is the correct answer. But I have to, oops, sorry. Okay, I should, so this is my pet, and I have to get rid of it here. Good. So let's go back. Pwede ipagawas ni siya. 1 hour lang. Oops. The reason why I included this is because a lot of you answered also compression and tension. So those who answered this, please please take note that it's only compression, no, because it's a significant number. That's why I get a little disturbed. No? I mentioned it in the lecture that it's compression only. That's why we put steel reinforcement to help it when it comes to tension. Okay, so the steel reinforcement addresses the problem with tension. So the steel reinforcement does not at all help out in the compression and the problems with compression. Now the last question here, mixing concrete on mechanical mixers consisting of a drum rotated by gasoline-fed engines The answer is machine mixing, and a lot of you, 36 respondents, actually answered this. But the correct answer here from Canvas is a blank. So I don't know what happened, but I checked the question and I tried to change it, but then it does not automatically change also the result. It seems that the result are already fixed. So therefore, again, since I can identify who these 36 are, so I'll just make the adjustment in the class record. So it's manually in the class record. So when I return my the exam to you, um, so just take note that if you answer this, you'll get an additional point for it. Okay, let's go directly to our topic: ceramic, stone, and stoneworks. Now, this topic was organized by Architect Behek, since she's the coordinator. And when I first received this, I got a little confused, especially because ceramics is a bit broad. So that's why I wrote here traditional ceramics, because ceramics, there are modern ceramics, some of which are even used um, for space, no? Or for electricity. So these are already made of compounds which are manufactured in the laboratories. But the traditional ceramic is basically your clay, which is fired, formed into something, then fired, and then to make it harden, and then applied with enamel and some other things to make it look shiny. And then, so that's why we now have all the tiles, which basically come from that material. And it's the earliest manufactured building material. If you review your history one, yeah, first year, so you're just starting out in your history. So you will realize there that a lot of the palaces before, the castles, are made of clay tiles or even ceramics. So, but that's different from clay itself, because what differs them is that ceramic is more um, glazed. So you put something there to protect it more, like it's almost like paint, it's enamel, and then you cook it again, and then it sticks, and then protects um, the clay. And then you can also put a lot of colors or decorations. But clay, in its very basic form, can be formed like bricks. Um, it's less plastic and more vulnerable to distortion and cracking on firing. So, but this is, I mentioned that this is brick, and yet we have another topic, upcoming topic about bricks and brickwork. Therefore, we will not go into the details about clay. Okay, so that's why I mentioned that I was really confused. Um, Terracotta, we'll just mention this here, because when we talk about brickwork, so we're not going to talk about the materials used for the roof. So terracotta is very popular when it comes to roofing material, and basically it's just clay also, but they I think in another country they call it terracotta, and it sounds nice. No? That's why people uh, sometimes call it terracotta. There are two types of terracotta: the adhesion type and then the anchor type. The anchor type basically needs some mechanical assistance, wires, for example, to keep it in place. The adhesion type, you have to put some mortar to make it stick. Now, the bulk of our discussion now will be about stones. Okay, so stones, it's so natural, no? Although it says here fabricated from rocks into individual panels, veneers, ornamental pieces, facing units, or blocks, commonly referred to as dimension stones or fragment of rocks, designated as broken or crushed stones. So stones, they vary. No? There are so many types of stones, depending on how they evolved. So one of these days, you might have a course on environmental science. I used to teach that also. Um, then there you will talk about these types of stones, so igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. So there is what we call the rock cycle. So rocks undergo different phases also. So it's a cycle. You can start anywhere. We start, for example, with rocks in the form of magma, say in the center of the earth, and then for some reason they are exposed to the surface of the earth, especially through eruption in volcanoes. So this exposed magma, when it cools down, so they harden into a rock, and we call that an igneous rock. Okay, and then much later they're broken down into pieces because they deteriorate throughout time, and so they become like sediments, and then they are compressed, and through time they are bounded also by chemicals, and then they again form into another rock. So this time it's a sedimentary rock. Okay, and then later on, this rock, I think, goes back to the center of the earth. For if there are earthquakes, if the or because actually the whole earth, the whole continent is moving slowly also, and then it finds its way under very extreme pressures or maybe very extreme heat, and then it changes, and then we call it metamorphic rock. So they alter the appearance, no, density, because of those extreme pressures. So we will not delve more into the science of how they formed. You will learn that in your ENSCI class, no, ENSCI, environmental science class. Let's talk about the different types of rocks that are used in construction. For igneous rock, one very common and popular example is the granite. Okay, it consists mainly of quartz, feldspar, mica, and other colored minerals. And then colors include black, gray, red, pink, brown, buff, and green. So we have here an example in the pictures. So they are very good for countertops because they're very sturdy. And then, especially in kitchen, but you have to be very rich to have a uh, kitchen with countertop granite. Um, it's also good for flooring and wall tile material. Okay. Um, Another type is serpentine. Um, Here we see a mask made of serpentine. So it's greenish in color, greenish black to olive green. And it has the same use as the granite. Basically, all of these have the same use, except that their colors and the composition differs. Even basalt, color ranges from gray to black, used mainly for paving stones and retaining walls. Normally, if it's used for paving stones, therefore you cannot smooth it, so it's always rough. In sedimentary rocks, one of the most common is sandstone, um, and it's also the best material for carving. If you see a lot of the old castles, especially in France, where you see a lot of gargoyles, carved gargoyles, and anything architectural. So they're mostly made of sandstone. The problem with sandstone, along with all the other sedimentary rock, is that they can deteriorate through time simply because of water or exposure to rain, especially if the rain is an acid rain. So I mean there are chemicals mixed in the rain for some reason. Maybe the evaporated water came from a industrial area, so there are chemicals mixed with the water. Shale, most common use is as roofing material, shingles. This one in the picture is in Norway. The limestone, so very common even in the Philippines. Sometimes you don't know that this is limestone. In Cebu, we have, when I was in college, the fad before was to use Mactan stones. So it basically looks like what the one in the picture, although it's more, the cut is cleaner, okay? And then, but right now I think they're banning it for environmental reasons. Um, a lot of the old churches are built with also limestone, but here we call that coral stone. After some time, especially if they're located near the sea or under the sea, so they form into corals, and then you can actually get harvest chunks of it and make it into building materials. But again, this time it's not possible anymore because the government is controlling uh, the use of coral stones. Metamorphic rock. Um, the most common, most popular is marble. Okay, as you can see in the picture, there's so many types and so many designs of marbles. Okay, so um, if you're doing interior decoration, interior designing, so it's a little challenge. That's why you have to be very familiar with um, your suppliers. You have to know what they have, and sometimes even you you ask them to reserve some special materials for you because you might have a project or you have a design that will make use of that material. So we cannot just say, okay, I'll use marble here. But then another consideration is, okay, marble, but what color? Because it comes with so many different colors. And sometimes it might not be the color that is easily available. Okay. The white marble is I think the most common, but you might have a client that wanted, say, a pink bathroom with marble floors, which means that your floors should also be made colored pink. So that's a challenge. So all these colors are actually um, due to the presence of minerals, say oxides of iron, silica, graphite, carbonaceous matter, mica. So all of them. So if you have reddish mineral mixed with the marble, so you'll have the reddish tint or this streak or pattern. So it's because all of these are now mixed up. No? This is the metamorphic rock, so they're all mixed up and then heated. Another one is quartzite. I could not get a better photo of quartzite. Sometimes this is polished. I remember an architect friend who showed me the um, the foyer which she designed, and in that foyer there is a shelf on a wall with a quartzite vase, so or a sculpture. But then she put the light for the foyer inside of that sculpture because that serves as the sculpture serves also as like the um, I forgot the term. No? Um, well, the light is behind it. It's like the whole sculpture is like a light bulb. cyst is good for paving and also for walling. So it looks like this. I have not encountered this material so much here in the Philippines, so I'm not very familiar with it. But it says here that the color varies from blue, green, brown, gold, white, gray, and red, and I guess you can see from the picture how they would all look like. I'm more familiar with slate, so like shale earlier. So they are also used for, they're also good for roof shingles. This one is not in Norway, I forgot where it is. But we don't see this type of application here in the Philippines. Slate is also good for um, paving materials for gardening, landscape. So you can cut them into sheets. So it's like, well, in Cebu, it's like otap, no? Or it's like a croissant made of small, thin sheets, of, say, in the case of croissant, thin sheet of dough. But this one is like thin sheets of stones and then crushed together. So you can cut them into small pieces, of thin layers, no? And it's easy to cut along those lines. So let's talk about stone masonry. Using all of this in construction, um, there are four general classifications in the notes given by architect Behe. Um, One is rubble stones, stones delivered from quarries, and then they are rough and irregular in shape, like this one. So it's like you just get the stone as it is, and sometimes maybe you choose what fits where, so that you get a better sealed wall. And then you can also cut the stones into specific dimensions, specific sizes, and we call them dimension stones. So all your tiles, for example, all your bricks, all your the pavement materials, the shingles are dimension stones. Flagstones, so for example, slates can be used like flagstones for flooring and horizontal surfaces. And you can use them as crushed rocks, not only to mix with cement, but also as is. No? Like when you're making Japanese garden, you're actually doing landscape using rocks of different sizes, different colors. And you can also use this, well, basically for landscaping. So you can see, they can form interesting shapes, no, if you mix them together with your artistry. But generally, in your history class, you will learn that there used to be just two types of walls, masonry walls, rubble and ashlar. Ashlar is like your dimension stones. Okay, so to make a wall made of rubble means making a wall made of all of these of stones of different shapes. Okay, I remember that this came out during the discussion on the Mycenaean period, because there was, I think this is the first time that the ashlar masonry was discovered. I mean, was used at least. So ashlar masonry, it doesn't have to be all of the same size. It can be different size as long as it's dressed. So another term we call the process of cutting into specific shapes is to dress it. No? So it's different from dressing a chicken, but dressing a stone is like this. Now, in terms of construction also, you can have a solid wall made of stones, like the one in the picture we have here. Usually this is employed in retaining walls, or not much in houses or buildings, because when it comes to buildings, um, normally what is used is the cavity wall. Okay, so it's two walls, and then you have a space inside or cavity, and that cavity you can fill it with some other things like rubbles. Um, in the modern context, that cavity is filled up with insulating materials. Um, the old churches, for example, the one here where I am now stationed in Maribohok. So um, we are restoring or reconstructing the old church, and the wall is something like more than 2 meters wide. So even sometimes 3 meters at some point. But you only have around 8 to 10 inches of um, coral stone blocks on both sides, and inside is all rubble. Rubble is your abono, no, or what we call it's just the all the dirt, all the earth that you can get outside and then placed there. Now, according to studies I've read about old churches, it's actually the rubble that serves as the main structural element, holding the roof and everything else. And then the purpose of the stone is actually just to keep the rubble in shape. Okay, so your rubble is like your mud brick or your mud walls. If you are, for example, because in your history, especially in Islam, you will you will read there that some of the palaces or some of the structures in the desert area are all made of mud, and we're talking about big structures. Okay, so but that's all right because there it seldom rains, but here it rains a lot. Therefore, you have to protect your your rubble, your mud wall from the rain, and that's the main purpose of the coral stones or the stone walls. Because in the Philippines, the coral stones are used more in the Visayas and Mindanao, but more of Visayas because there are hardly any churches, stone churches in Mindanao. Okay, so in Luzon and yes, in the north, they make use of adobe stones, which we are not discussing here. Um, so the old churches that you see there, like San Agustin, the Manila Cathedral, they made use of adobe stone, not coral stones. And here in Cebu and Bohol, you hardly, even in Palawan, you hardly see adobe stone. Mostly are made of coral stones. Now in the modern setting, so the masonry wall now made into a composite construction. So I forgot to place here the word composite. Um, no, because it's very expensive to have that cavity wall construction. No, it's not easy to look for rubble stones. So therefore, you can only have maybe a thin veneer or sheet of that, and then against a more commercialized brick or masonry units like our hollow blocks here in the Philippines. So the drawing you see here is simply that, no? The hollow blocks, and then you have a facing made of the stones, dressed stones, and then you just make use of these metal wires to anchor it in place. Now, this type of construction is hardly used um, because instead of using these What I mean to say is this metal ties is not very common so far. I have not encountered this in my projects and even in restoration projects. So, although this should have been done, what they do instead is that they put the metal like brackets, and then they force it into the hollow block walls. It's like they have not thought of it at the start of the construction, so it's like an afterthought always. Um, and besides, what also keeps it um, sticking to the hollow block walls are the mortar. So in between that, there's like what we do here, for example, the instead of an 8 to 10 inches of um, coral stone, so they made only a 3-inch thick coral stone, and then there's a 3-inch thick of mortar to keep it in place against the hollow block walls. So it's like that. No? So in the end, you still see something like coral stone, but it's not really that thick. It's not really authentic. Okay, I think this is the last slide for Stoneworks. Um, so last time I was not able to give you a homework, but this time I will, but I don't think I wrote it down. So, but I'm just going to write it later in both Google Classroom and Canvas. So it's very simple. Just look for 3 suppliers for marble and granite. So, or granite, marble or granite. So, so we're talking about that only. So it's a very easy task. And I hope you're not thinking that my homework is just to keep you busy, so that I have basis for grade. Actually, we're building up a directory of materials, suppliers of materials, which you can actually later use when you have your project. So even as students, sometimes you end up with a project. Maybe it's just a room, or maybe it's just a toilet outside or something. But at least you now have a directory of suppliers. And later on in your building tech, you will also be asked to look for prices of materials because you're going to make an estimate, and this will help you. So you start building up that database, that directory right now during our class, and in the later building tech, you will use it. Okay, so I would I would have wanted you to look for suppliers of detailed materials, but it's enough that we have this. See, it's blank. Upcoming schedule the Friday now. This is now. So we have this lecture, but on Monday we will have the pre-midterm exam. The coverage will be the first topic from wood, then concrete, plaster, and then this one. So we will not have a special quiz only um, about stonework. Then after that, this is what I mentioned to you. We'll talk about brick and brickwork, then blocks and blockwork. It's my first time to actually hear about blockwork, but this syllabus was given to me. So my guess is that blocks and blockworks are the masonry units, which are aside from bricks. Okay, so because aside from bricks, the blocks are like your hollow blocks, but hollow blocks are found only in the Philippines. Outside of the Philippines, they use other materials. And I'll make sure to mention that because what materials they use outside, because uh, a lot of Filipinos think that the hollow block is found everywhere in the world. Okay, so especially for architects, you should not think that way. Should not think that way. Okay. And then ferrous and non-ferrous material, these are actually metals. So much later. So hopefully, so what happens during this self-review? Okay, um, because I'm pacing all our topics so that we get to finish everything, but there are still some days left. So again, I spaced all these days in between so that for emergency reasons, for example, if suddenly there's a nationwide blackout on the 23rd, so we cannot at all meet or discuss anything, so we can reschedule that on the 25th. Otherwise, if everything is normal, um, so self-review time is simply no activity. Maybe you'll have just a quiz of the bricks and brickwork. Okay, very good. So I'll stop sharing and then let's check if there are questions. Oops. Um, so many, so many things here, but I think most of them are jokes. Kanang self-review, sir? No class na, sir? Yes, yay. But I just explained it. I-pass in Canvas ang Google Class. We'll try to, so far in the exam, in the quiz, we tried Canvas, so there are some glitches. At least I know what to do next. But this next assignment, let's try to pass it in Canvas. We just, if for example, you have difficulty submitting in Canvas, you can submit in Google Classroom and then just send me a message so that I can look at it there. Yes, the assignment is either marble or granite. Okay, because some suppliers carry only marble, some suppliers carry only granite. Otap, Proud Mactan. Sir, mauning use sa Manila Bay. Yes, if you're referring to the slides about the limestone, that's dolomite material. Yes, they break it down into very small pieces because actually limestone is more abundant in sea area near the seas. Okay, that's why Luzon is so big. It's landlocked. So out when it's towards the inside, you don't have limestones, but maybe around it, you'd have limestones, but at least but they're limited. Unlike Visayas, it's all islands, and Cebu, for example, is I think almost all made of limestones. Okay, nanapay pagkaon dari o siomai. Okay, so we don't have any important questions, just a lot of so if I had maybe asked you not to mute your microphone, I think you'll be very noisy with all of these comments. So I guess that's it for now, and please prepare for your pre-midterm exam. I'll make sure it's going to be very hard, just for the challenge. No? But it's multiple choice, and I'll try to I don't know what I'll try, but I'll try to make it more interesting. Everything we've discussed, from wood to stones. Okay, so that's it. Sir, pila ka items? Last time was 45, so this time let's aim for 100. Okay, and then 1 hour only. 1 hour only. Okay, so yes, 100 items is just chicken feed. Chicken feed. Board exam is like 200 to 300 items, and then it's more just more difficult. Discount discount for quiz. You should ask for more points rather than discount. Okay, so I'll now turn off the recording and then